Salutations everybody, it is Maddie here today in 4K. My freckles are in 4K, as are my eye bags. Even my girl 2B's in 4K, just look at it! I am pumped at some point in time to record in decent lighting with this camera to say the least, but anyway, a point of contention in gaming this year has frequently been crossplay. The most common offender, Sony. The biggest highlight, Fortnite. It's led to a partnership between Nintendo and Microsoft where they're best buds now, and they're constantly throwing egg in the face of Sony due to a lot of anti-consumer and odd decisions. But it's been a solid 2 weeks for Sony. PS Now received an update where you can now download PS2 and 4 games through PS Now, and on top of that, Sony is allowing crossplay, as I'm sure most of you have heard, on the PlayStation 4. I'm not sure if it took a rocket scientist at Sony to really figure out that, hey, we need to start progressing as a company, start making some strides forward because the next generation's coming up and we don't want to start a step or two behind, because we see what happened with Microsoft when they were a step or two behind and what happened to Sony themselves at the beginning of the PlayStation 3 generation. One of the most vocal blamers and complainers of Sony's lack of crossplay was Bethesda themselves though. When it came to Elder Scrolls Legends and Fallout 76, Bethesda was very quick to point the finger at Sony for not doing crossplay and also say that they were interested in it. So it was quite odd initially upon the announcement of Fortnite having crossplay on PS4 that Bethesda was one of the first people to back off of what they had initially wanted. Now you may be wondering why I waited so long to cover this very important news. Number one, Assassin's Creed Odyssey review. I played that game like a full-time job. Number two was I wanted to see the story develop a little more and wait for a response from Bethesda and see if anything happened over the next couple of days. But now that we've got all the information together, let's go right into it together. It begins with Pete Hines applauding Sony, saying, well done, and then following it up with saying, folks, chill. I work with a lot of devs and games for whom this is important going forward. Fallout 76 does not support crossplay for a number of reasons. I have no idea if it ever will, but I assure you it is not on our radar right now as we focus on the beta and launch. So of course it was very odd seeing this initially stern response with very little reason as to why Bethesda decided to make this decision after complaining so much about Sony not allowing crossplay. However, as Pete Hines responded more on Twitter to concerned fans and confused ones at that, it started to make more sense how the situation went on behind the scenes. So it was a false statement from Todd Howard about Sony preventing crossplay for Fallout 76. I guess I'm gullible for believing in Todd, and you guys, this feels bad, man. Pete says, no, but I'm sorry you feel bad. We're 7 weeks away from launch. We're gonna focus on shipping the game and then shift our attention to other things. I'm sure someone will look into this once we get a little air to breathe. I have no way of knowing what the outcome will be right now. So why this was information that's tucked in a reply and not like in the tweet thread about Pete Hines saying like, hey, chill, we're not doing this right now, and then following it up afterwards and being like, oh, but we're gonna try to look into it, I'm sure someone will. Perhaps it's not his shot to call and he doesn't want to make assumptions, deliver false info, piss more people off. It's kind of a lose-lose situation, but at least we know that at some point in time, Bethesda is going to look into crossplay for Fallout 76. Now, I know a lot of people do value crossplay. I see why it's very important, but for me, I always viewed it as a quality of life improvement for a game. Down the line, when it's starting to lose its legs a little bit, your group falls apart, you're the only player in Fallout 76, and you think to yourself, you know what, solo play isn't that fun, but you have a buddy who has it on Xbox, has it on PC, and they're grinding away at it, and you guys just wish you could play together without having to pay another $60. That's where the surprise crossplay a year later plays a factor where it reignites the game. People from all over start jumping in together, crossing systems, and I also am unsure whether or not it's a flip of the switch. We've seen accidental turn-ons of crossplay before, so how simple is it connecting all these networks? I'm not a game developer, so I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know, but I think some future responses from Pete Hines that we're gonna get into can shed some light on the matter. I gotta be careful with this 4K camera, man. Like, I feel like you guys can see everything. Like, my chin hair is a little off, or like when I over salivate, if I talk for too long, you know, stuff like that. I gotta be careful. If you guys can see that in full detail now. But Todd Howard stated previously the reason you guys didn't have crossplay was Sony's fault alone. And now they are allowing it. You say Fallout 76 never had crossplay in the first place. Seems like someone lied. Pete says, if in February you tell me I can't dress up as a raider for Halloween, I'll start working on a different costume. You can't tell me a few days before Halloween that I can be a raider and then act surprised when I stick with what I worked on because you said I couldn't go as a raider. Interesting little Fallout analogy there, but I find that to be the most vital piece of information there, and it was initially what I suspected when I first heard the news of Bethesda saying we're not doing crossplay. I don't know why they'd complain about Sony and kind of push the blame on them. I've seen a lot of speculation that Bethesda used them as a scapegoat for good PR or just to point the finger at Sony for their own laziness. And while those two are very well possible, I feel like if Bethesda were to consider those options, they would have also considered the option of it inevitably ending up this way, where, hey, what if Sony came out and ended up doing crossplay? So my suspicion, which now seems to be true, is that Bethesda did have crossplay plans, approached Sony with them, approached Microsoft with them. Sony said at the time, back in February, I'm guessing, that's a no-go. We're not doing crossplay. We don't need crossplay. We don't want crossplay. You've heard all of the crazy PR statements that came out from Sony about crossplay on Fortnite. And I doubt Bethesda is gonna sit there with their hands folded on their desk being like, okay, Sony, we'll wait. They're gonna move on and work on other things. I mean, that at least is very simple game development that anyone on the outside or inside can understand. So frankly, since this seems to be the case, I can't say I blame their decision since we're 7 weeks from launch at this point in time. And yeah, it's too late to flip on the switch. Down the line, it's more than likely gonna happen. I'm not gonna sit here and act like it's not going to, because I don't think it's their first concern. I don't even say that as a point of defense, because you really have to look at it from their position. They have the beta launching, trying to stress test servers, fixing whatever mess comes out of this, because I'm frankly not too confident in a beta this short of time before launch. Then they gotta fix all the problems that happen with the game. They have to supply post-launch content. Crossplay, like I said, I truly believe it's gonna be that quality of life thing that we're gonna see down the line to kind of reignite the player base. Wasn't your reasoning for not having it that Sony wouldn't get their heads out of their asses? Is it simply too late in development to turn around and start designing it at this point? To which Pete Hines goes, we're 7 weeks from launch. Like, as in it's not going to happen right now. A great question that was asked, however, is, so why aren't Xbox and PC crossplay a thing? Just leave Sony out. Pete says because it was a thing that, if we do it, we're doing it for all platforms or not at all. And since all wasn't an option based on what we knew, we focused on other things. To which the Great Inquirer responds, fair enough. This is the one part that I don't quite understand. At the point in time where Bethesda was planning crossplay, they knew Sony was out, but they knew Xbox was all about crossplay, all about consumer favoritism, because they wanted to win the hearts of gamers through services, because their games really haven't done the trick all too much. So what was stopping Bethesda from applying some of the pressure by being yet another company to go over to Xbox/Nintendo's corner, although Nintendo has nothing to do with Fallout, and start crossplay up there and be like, look at all the fun we're having over here, Sony, don't you want to get in on that? It would have been a more high pressure case for them. So I have to say, this is the one part I genuinely don't understand why they didn't just go through with it, because they could have had some of it. People would have understood, especially at that point in time with Sony saying no to every single crossplay offer under the sun, let alone the biggest game on the internet. So yeah, PlayStation fans would have been jaded, but I don't think it would have been at Bethesda. It would have been at Sony at that point in time. And Bethesda could have probably avoided a lot of this PR disaster by being like, well, we tried with Sony, but Microsoft was game, so we did it with them. And then when Sony opens the door, like they're doing now, all of a sudden, we can start pursuing that since some of the infrastructure is already set up. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I got it all figured out. I don't know how simple crossplay is. It's just from the outside looking in, this was the one choice that I'm not a fan of. But other than that, I kind of get how it all unfolded behind the scenes. Bethesda had a plan, presented it, Sony said no. They were very much standing pat for months and months at a time. It's just before launch. Sony flips the switch, and now Bethesda ends up being the one who looks a little foolish. So we'll see how this develops over time. If you're expecting crossplay down the line, in my opinion, I'm not saying that's exactly what's gonna happen, but that's probably a safe assumption. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments down below, so do fire away. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you like the new camera. Let me know what I could do to maybe improve any quality or whatnot, because this is gonna be my first time editing footage with it, so I'm really excited about that. But anyway, fire away in the comments. Follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that as it fuels all the content we create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.